Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Tom Morgan Drum Studio. We're back in my book, A Sequential Approach to Fundamental Snare Drum today, and we're on page 27, and we'll do page 27 and 28. Page 27 is called Non-Beamed Eighth Notes. So as you look at that, you'll see some eighth notes that look different. They're not beamed to other eighth notes, they have a flag on them. Because there's nothing else to beam them to. If then in the first measure of number one, if you were to beam that to that quarter note, then that would change the quarter note into an eighth note. So there are going to be lots of times where eighth notes appear this way when they're not beamed to anything else. So you've got to get used to that. So that's what this page is about. The big thing you want to do is to try to continue to see the notes in groups rather than individually. And especially like if you look at the second line of number one there, every one of those measures has a group of 4 eighth notes, which will either be 1 and 2 and or 3 and 4 and. So the other half of the measure is made up of an eighth note, an eighth rest, and a quarter note in some combination. So you can hopefully see those 3 things together as half the measure, as one thing, rather than look at the eighth note, look at the eighth rest, look at the quarter note or whatever. So, playing pages like this will help you to develop that ability to see the notes in groups. All right, so let's try number one. And I'll count out loud as I always do. And we'll just go through it. If you can play it along with me at some point, that would be great. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and 1 and 2 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and. Okay, one other quick thing to kind of keep in mind, if you're in 4/4 time and the last thing in the measure is an eighth note, you know that it has to be on the and of 4. So, for example, the last measure of the third line, even if you were to get all goofed up in the counting and everything, as long as you know where you are in the count, you can at least play the last note right on the and of 4. So this is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Helpful hints. All right, so now we'll jump down to number 2, which is in 3/4 time. 3 counts to a measure and the quarter note gets 1 count. So this may be a little more tricky to read because we don't have the even number, 4 counts in a measure, so we don't see those the halfway point of the measure like we do in number 1. But again, we want to get used to this, so here we go. We're going to play number 2, counting out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 1 and 2 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and I made one mistake. Maybe you noticed it. Did you notice? I played a note in the first measure of the last line instead of a rest. So even I make mistakes. But other than that, that's the way those go. So work on those, and then we turn the page and we get to do metronome fun number 2. You probably remember how exciting metronome fun number 1 was. So now we get to use eighth notes, and again, the little slash marks show you where the clicks are going to fall. And you notice I suggest that you try it at several different tempos there. I'm going to go at 72. And I don't think I'm going to play all of these, but I'll play a couple of 3 or 4 of them just to give you the idea. Now remember, when you play with a metronome, this is my metronome, which is ancient. But if you don't have a metronome, you can get one for free on your phone. Just go to the App Store and you'll get a choice of quite a few different metronomes, and just pick one out and download it. But anyway, the goal here is to try to play exactly with the metronome, to try to, as we say, bury the metronome, to play so close to it, so perfectly with it that you don't hear the metronome, because you're covering it up with what you play. Okay, so a good thing to do before you start is to, in your mind, subdivide eighth notes. This metronome is clicking quarter notes. So in your mind, you want to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and get that subdivision in your head first. Okay, so now I'll play the first line, and you can keep repeating these lines over and over rather than just going straight down, or you can play from top to bottom. Either way, both ways are worth doing. Okay, here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, now from where I stood, there were some times when I played with the click and I couldn't hear the click. I thought, wow, my metronome battery went out. But no, I just was that much with it that happened. Okay, so here's number 2. 1, 2, and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now let's just try going down to 60. Okay, so you don't want to become, kind of a one-tempo Joe, that you can only play one tempo, and anything else you start to play slower, a slower tempo, you gradually go back up to your tempo, or if you start faster, you gradually slow down to your tempo. You want to be able to take a tempo and hold it without speeding up or slowing down. So to do that, we want to practice at varying tempos. Okay, let's jump down to number 5. Okay, so in your mind, you want to subdivide 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, and you want to make sure that the clicks that fall on rests, you really hear them with the rests. Okay, let's do the bottom line now. Lots of rests in this one. Rests are actually where most people make their mistakes. And they do it because they like to skip over rests, or I call them rest compactors. You know, they don't really think that the rest is that important, so they just rush over it to get to the note. But rests are just as important as notes, and the silence that you perform when you play a rest, it has to be just that. You have to perform the rest. So make sure that you don't stop counting during any rest. You count even more intensely during the rest, because it's easy to get off if you don't. Okay, so here we go, number 7. 1 and 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and. Okay, and that last measure is a good example of where you don't really even need to look at the rests, or if you see that eighth note's at the last thing in the measure, then just wait for the end of 4 and play it. But don't stop counting. Okay, so practice those at various tempos. You can practice, like I said, a line over and over. You can practice starting at the beginning and going straight down, whatever you want to do. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. If you have trouble with the metronome part of it, don't be discouraged, okay? Lots of people, some people just turn on the metronome the first time they ever try it, and they're reasonably able to play with it. Whereas other people really struggle with keeping with that click. But I've seen hundreds of students who had a lot of trouble at the beginning. They stuck with it and they didn't give up, and they just kept practicing it, and pretty soon it started to get better. But it's an essential ability that you as a musician need to have. So make sure you don't neglect it. And it is fun. That's why it's called Metronome Fun. All right, thanks a lot. Be sure and like this video if you liked it, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.